Welcome into WagerTalk TV. I am Drew Martin, joined by Brian Leonard and Kevin Dolan of WagerTalk.com as we're talking a 12 noon kickoff here on Saturday in the Big 12. Kevin, coming to you first, we get Baylor at Iowa State. Cyclones minus 3-point favorites. There are a couple 2.5s out there, 46.5 being the total. Are you liking anything in Ames, Iowa on Saturday?
Yeah, lean Iowa State here, Drew. I faded the Cyclones last weekend against Ohio. Thought it was a good kind of situational spot for the Bobcats in that one. You know, you had the Cyclones coming off that huge emotional win over Iowa. They had obviously this big conference game against Baylor coming up this week on deck. But, Iowa State proved me wrong. You know, they routed Ohio 43-10 in that one, had double the amount of yardage in the Bobcats. Hunter Deckers had a great game as well, went 28-36 through the air, 7.4 yards per pass. So I'm a lot less inclined to step in front of the Cyclones again this week, as, they look like a focused team this year. Baylor, for their part, solid win over Texas State last week, obviously, but has it moved my needle all that much, that win? I don't think so. We got to remember Texas State hung minus 11 rushing yards back in week 1 against Nevada. So it's really hard to be impressed with the blowout nature of that win last week against them. And, then on top of that, Baylor hung just 3.5 yards per play against BYU 2 weeks ago on the road as well. Had a massive time of possession advantage in that game, but, just couldn't move the ball well at all. So 2.9 yards per rush as well on the ground in that one. So on the surface, we've got a top 20, nationally ranked team this year in Baylor, 17th in the AP poll, 17th in the coaches poll. Facing a team who aren't in the polls right now, and you're saying them a plus money for this game. So if you're in the rankings, this looks like value. But in my opinion, you got to trust what Vegas is telling you here. Iowa State is giving up just 4.6 yards per pass attempt through the air in defense. Baylor's giving up 7.1 so far on the road. So, yeah, we're getting the team playing the better football right now, in my opinion, in Iowa State at home. So I'm happy to take a piece of them here. At this price. So, Iowa State for me on Saturday.
Good stuff from Kevin Dolan. Brian, coming to you next. Do you think the dog is barking here, or do you think Vegas is telling us something?
Well, it opened 2.5, and there's been a steady flow of money all day long on Iowa State here. But Iowa State hasn't lost a conference home game since 2019, I believe. So those are positive for Iowa State. But this was supposed to be a down season for Iowa State. They lost their starting quarterback last year. They've lost some quality players. And unlike a lot of the other, the bigger time schools, the Oklahomas and maybe Texas in this conference, they're not used to losing a lot of players that in the offseason that are difference makers. So they're pretty fat and sassy, as Marco would say at this point. And Kevin talked about it. You would have thought they would have had a letdown last week against Ohio, but I'm not a big Ohio fan this season. In fact, the MAC as a whole, I don't think is very good this season. Toledo may be the best of the bunch, but so I'm not reading too much into that. Right now, you take a look at what team against FBS teams, yards per play. Iowa currently is ranks 5th at 3.36, but they played Ohio and they played Iowa, and we've joked all we wanted about Iowa. The only thing that slowed them down last week offensively was continual thunderstorms and everything. But Iowa finally got on the board, and they had to throw a shutout to cover that number. This Iowa offense is not very good. So even though the defense has looked really good for Iowa State right now, I don't think they've been very impressive. Kevin talked about the Baylor offense. They haven't been very good this year. Unless this game gets to 3.5, then maybe I'll might take a little piece of the dog here. But the total's at 46. Not impressed with either offense. I think Iowa State's good defensively, but once again, until they play a good offense, we won't know. And I'm not sure we're going to know in this one. So the total's at 46. I'm leaning with the under in this one.
He's Brian Leonard. You heard from Kevin Dolan as well. Check them both out on the website. $9 Mondays is a good day to do so. All plays, all handicappers discounted to just $9. Check it out, WagerTalk.com.